G'day, my name is Peter and I'm 55 years old. And at around 2:30 a.m. this time of year 20 years ago, I had a heart attack. You want to know what caused it? If you guessed money, you'd be correct. If you guessed unsustainable debt levels, then you win the whole showcase. Now, I probably don't need to tell you that stress is a silent killer and that one of the greatest causes of stress is money problems, usually around debt. That's why I'm going to share the simple 3-step method that I use to get myself out of debt, because I know what it's like to lay in bed at night with that gnawing lump of anxiety in your throat that filters throughout the rest of your life and everything else that's good in your life, and it slowly destroys everything like a cancer. I know how all of that feels. Now, I don't know how you got into your debt situation, assuming that's why you're here, but to give you a little context, I'm going to share with you how I got into my debt situation, the pursuit of financial goals and the hours that it required to try and achieve them. Often I was doing 18-hour stretches, sometimes even 24 hours in one go. And so with all of that hard work, I felt that I deserved some kind of a reward for it. The rewards that I was seeking were somewhere way off in the distance. And in order to keep myself motivated and keep moving towards those goals and doing the hard work, I felt that I needed rewards along the way. And so it was very easy to get into the habit of buying consumer goods in order to satisfy that. Buying consumer products made me feel a little bit more successful. It made me feel like I was not so much faking it until I made it, but at least I was progressing towards my ideal lifestyle, and these were little sort of markers along the way. But if I look deeper into that, really what I was doing was I was overcompensating for the fact that my life hadn't turned out the way that I'd hoped at that point. If I felt like I just wasn't getting where I wanted to as I had envisioned when I was younger. And the third reason is, and you'll see that these are all kind of interlinked, is that I had projected myself out into a future of prosperity and success, and I was simply living that future ahead of schedule. I was kind of hoping that the money would catch up before anyone realized that I was basically full of shit. Best dad ever. Just ask. Thanks to my 12-year-old son, Tommy. Okay, so rather than labour the point of my past missteps, let's get straight into how I actually did this. I must stress, though, that this is really just a snippet of the whole debt story. I actually wrote a book about this book here 6 years ago on getting out of debt, how I got myself out of debt. And this 3-step process is part of that book. It's kind of the meat of that book, the core of the book. If you want a copy, you can get a digital copy down below in the description. I don't know what I priced it at, $7.50 or something. Anyway, but this is the core of that book, but it's not the whole story when it comes to getting out of debt, understanding it, how to use it, what to avoid, all that kind of stuff. We're just going to focus simply on the process that I followed for getting out of debt. And the first step kind of has 3 parts to it. The first part is that you need to first figure out how you got in this position in the first place. I shared sort of the 3 core reasons that got me into this, but can also go back to your parents' understanding and perception and beliefs about money, whether they have a scarcity mindset, whether they think money's not important, whether they think money's evil, whatever it is. You need to figure out, why do I have this relationship with money? And how did I get myself into this pickle? Because if you don't solve that, if you don't at least answer that, then there's a very good chance of slipping back into that, because everything ultimately comes from mindset and how you think and your attitude to things. You can follow this method and you can get yourself out of debt, but you may well just slip straight back into it, just like an alcoholic who doesn't address why they drink or why they think they need to drink will easily slip back into drinking if they don't address that first before they make the decision to change their identity of who they are and what they do and don't do. Okay, so that's the first part, is you really need to think about how you got into this. The second part is that once you understand that, is then make a decision, a commitment that you are never going to return to this way of living again. That from here on in, once you get through this process, you are going to enjoy living a debt-free lifestyle. And I need to preface this debt-free terminology. Debt-free doesn't mean no debt at all in your life. I'm a firm believer in using debt, using leverage to achieve wealth. And I cover that in my book about using good debt to achieve wealth. Most people who have accumulated significant wealth have done it with the benefit of leverage, with the benefit of borrowings. And the third part of this first step is to determine where your money is going. We're simply going to pull down a copy of all of our spending off our internet banking or whatever place we can get that information from. I recommend using a debit card or a credit card to make all of your purchases wherever humanly possible and then simply pulling down a report off your internet banking to look at those numbers. The second step is to look at that information that you pull down off your internet banking and start asking yourself some very important questions. And I list those in the book. I'll just pull out a few for you. Some of those questions include things like, why am I buying this? Is it a necessity? Am I buying it for status, or am I buying it for convenience? Is it something that I can live without, or is it a financial burden that I can get rid of altogether? Can I eliminate it? Does this expense bring me closer to freedom or push freedom further away? I find for me, that's often a really good question to ask. Another one is, can I get this item cheaper elsewhere? And more often than not, you can. Can I substitute it for something that's just as effective in terms of its pleasure for less money? Does the benefit that I get from this thing justify the cost of getting it? And here's one, if you want to think really strategically, what would this expense amount to if I invested at 7% per annum compounded for 10 years? And I'll give you an example here. $500 a month compounded for 7% per month over 10 years is $86,500. So that $500 a month that you're spending on something is not just $500 a month. It's actually $86,500 in 10 years. So that's step number 2, is to pull down that information into a spreadsheet and start looking at the items and asking yourself these questions. And in the book, I have a recommended format for displaying this information in a spreadsheet. And in fact, I'll put a link in the description below with an example spreadsheet so that you can download that and use that as your template for looking at this information. The third step in this process is where all the action happens. This is the step that's ultimately going to set you free and give you an instant pay rise, because any money that you save is like a pay rise. And then any money that you save that you then apply to an outstanding debt is a compounded pay rise. And as you do that in a cascading fashion with multiple debts, then the pay rises accelerate and you get wealthier and wealthier because you're attacking it at both ends. You're reducing expenses at one point, you're applying them to debts at another point, you're liberating yourself from two directions. And there's a third way also that you can, which is to increase your earnings by doing something on the side. But this is all about debt, so we're focusing on reducing debt. In fact, this step is so pivotal that in my book, I actually call this step the killing spree, because this is where you're going to start really killing off your debts. Okay, so I'm going to break down step 3 into a number of parts. And the first part of that is that once you have your information downloaded from your bank in a format like the spreadsheet that you'll find a link to down below, is to start classifying each of the transactions that appear in that spreadsheet to give them a name that is meaningful to you. And so then you can sort those transactions into those categories. So you get a much clearer picture of, okay, in this category of, say, pay TV, I have this many transactions per month. I'm subscribed to Netflix, I'm subscribed to Hulu and to Stan and to all these other things. That's a lot of pay TV. And you can subtotal it and go, crap, I'm spending this much a month on pay TV. And then that starts to make it easier for you to do the next step. And that next step is to look at each one and decide if you can eliminate that expense, to cull it completely. And if you can, then you write a simple note next to that line item and then changing the new cost per month for that expense to 0. If you can't cull it, if you can't eliminate that expense, then your next question is, can I substitute this expense for something nearly as effective or as effective for less? That may well be you have a coffee machine and you're getting Nespresso branded coffee pods. Can I maybe substitute those for a different brand that's less expensive and may not be quite as good, but given that my priority here is to reduce my debts, they're going to be good enough. Can you do something like that? There's plenty of things where you are used to using a particular brand name of something, or you're used to enjoying a particular indulgence that you can replace with another brand or another source or another type of indulgence that's not the same thing but gives you a similar level of happiness and pleasure, and replace and substitute it with that. If that's the case, then write a note about what the substitution is going to be and put the new dollar figure per month that is going to cost you. If you can't substitute it for something else, then ask yourself, all right, can I at least reduce the amount that I spend on this thing each month? Do I really need 2 haircuts a month? Could I get 1 haircut a month? Should I be getting Maccas on the way to work and on the way home from work every day? Or should I just spoil myself and do it on Thursdays and Fridays? There's a lot of things that you can do here with regular expenses, because it's not generally the one-off expenses that crush you. It's the habits that crush you. Just like everything in life, metaphors seem to apply across the board in everywhere. Just like in the micro and the macro and the mega, principles usually apply in a similar fashion. It's just the scale differs. And so it's the same with this. If you have an expense that really you could reduce, write a note and to describe how you're reducing it, and then put a new monthly dollar figure in the new cost per month column. Once you've done this with every item in your spreadsheet and totaled up the new cost per month column and compared it to the current cost per month column, you should have a smaller figure in the new cost per month. And hopefully for you, that has created a surplus, an amount that is left over per month for you to now apply to one of your debts. What we're going to do here is open up a new bank account. Call it the killing fund, if you like, providing that doesn't get you arrested. In this new bank account, you are now going to automatically deposit the amount of that surplus. This is a monthly figure on your spreadsheet. So if you get paid weekly, you're going to divide that by 4, and every week you're going to put 1/4 of that amount into this new bank account automatically. You're not going to have to leave that up to choice. It's going to happen automatically every pay cycle, whether you like it or not. So each week, fortnight, month, whatever you get paid, an amount is going to be automatically transferred from the bank account into which your salary goes into this new bank account that you're going to open, which I call the killing fund. You call it what you like. Next step. Every time that automatic transfer happens from your salary bank account into your killing fund account, you're going to empty that killing fund account and put that money into one of your debts. Now, here's what I recommend. Say if you've got 3 or 4 different debts, all right? I recommend you start off with the smallest debt. Yes, conventional wisdom says pour your money into the debt with the highest interest rate, and logically, yes, that makes sense. But we're not logical human beings and we're affected by emotions. So I reckon what you need here is a quick win. You need an early win. So I would start with the debt that is the smallest, with the smallest balance, and put your surplus funds from the killing fund into that debt every pay cycle. So every time there's an automatic transfer from your salary account into your killing fund account, take all of that money out of the killing fund account and pay it straight into that debt. This way, you pay off a debt as fast as possible because it's the one with the smallest balance, and you can feel that experience of the weight lifting off your shoulders, that finally you're getting control of something which up until now you may well have felt was beyond your control, and that is everything. Okay, so you may only do this once or twice, depending on how many debts you have. Say if you have a debt that's $500, another one that's $1,200, but another one that's $35,000, say a car or something, well, rather than tackle the car now, you need an early win. You want to pay off a debt. So start with those first 2 smaller ones. Get the smallest one kicked off first, then the second one, and then you can start tackling the third. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and rather exciting. Once you kill off that first debt, you're going to feel great. But now what you also have is whatever was the fixed monthly payment for that debt. Say you had a minimum monthly payment of $150 on that debt. Now that that debt's paid off, you not only have that surplus money from your salary account going into the killing fund, paying off that debt, you not only have that available for the next debt, but also that $150 a month that you were also having to pay on that debt before you started this whole process. You already had a monthly payment. Now you have those 2 amounts of money available for the next debt. So what do? You increase the amount of direct transfer going from your salary account into your killing fund account by an amount equal to what the fixed monthly payments were on that debt that you've just killed. So now instead of having, say, $300 extra to put into your next debt, which was, say, for example, the amount that you were transferring from your salary account into your killing fund account every pay cycle, you not only have that, you've now also got the extra $150 that you were paying towards this first debt that you've now killed to put to the next one. So now you're putting more money into the next debt. So that gets paid off at a faster rate per month or per cycle, whatever your pay cycle is. That gets paid off faster than the previous one did. And you can see where this is going. Once that one's paid off, now you've got 2 previous debt payments plus the previous surplus that you initially applied into your killing fund. Now you've got those 3 amounts of money combined to go into the third debt. And so you can see how this accelerates beautifully. And it gives you an incredible sense of accomplishment because it's like you're just killing off these enemies one by one. And as you kill one off, it gets easier to kill the second, which then makes it easy to kill the third. For the first time, possibly in years, you actually feel like you're in control, that you are determining your own destiny now. And this permeates everything else. It's a bit like the reverse of being in debt. or being an alcoholic or being a gambler or being whatever else it is that is destroying you, that starts to infect every other part of your life. Well, likewise, conversely, this does the same. It infects every other part of your life positively. You have a renewed sense of confidence and self-control and a positive outlook. You start to become more optimistic about what you can accomplish, what the future holds. It's enormously empowering, this process.
I've been in Rome for 3 weeks, and all I've done is learn a few Italian words and eat.
You feel guilty because you are American. You don't know how to enjoy yourself.
I beg your pardon?
It's true. Americans know entertainment, but don't know pleasure.
And this is the thing with debt, is we buy things on debt for entertainment. It's not for true pleasure, because the sting of the debt that we carry with this depreciating consumer item that we've just bought destroys any long-term pleasure that we can possibly hope to get out of this thing that we bought. This is why I only pay cash for cars. This is why I only pay cash for anything that is a potentially depreciating consumer item. The only things that I have debt over is real estate investment. I don't even use debt to buy any other kind of investment instrument, only real estate. Killing off debt, I promise you, gives you a whole new lease on life. That's impossible to see when you're neck deep in the quagmire. You just can't see it. This is future me stepping in at the end of the video. If you'd like to learn how I quit drinking in a weekend more than 6 months ago, watch this video here. And if you'd like to learn something completely different, the basics of car photography in less than 9 minutes, I know my topic range here is fairly broad on this channel, then watch this video here. Thanks for watching this one. See you in the next one.